Round 9 of the British GT Championship saw the series make the first of its 2 visits to Silverstone. For most teams, there'd been a 7-week gap since Castle Combe. Jonathan France's Embassy team, however, had barely found time to rebuild the car after the disappointment of their 5th place in the Spa 24-hour race a fortnight before. The drivers, though, were upbeat about their chances in the single 2-hour race at Silverstone.
Well, I think we want to win this one. If we get as close as I think we should in lap times, and we're making progress on that. We missed the test day, obviously, because our car was being held together with tank tape at the end of that, so it needed to be rebuilt. So we're just catching up a little bit. I think we'll get closer to the front pace and the bit of testing time that we've got today and tomorrow.
I think the Ferrari is a better car here. It's got big, fast corners, which the Ferrari likes. To take a race to the Ferrari this weekend, we really need to have it wet.
And prospects for the race?
I'd really like just to be on the podium this weekend and beat Nathan Kinch.
The 2 Scuderia Ecos Ferraris were dominant as usual in practice and qualifying, 2.5 seconds faster than the Embassy Porsche. Ben and Neil also had to contend with the Keen and Hyde Mosler, qualifying just ahead of them as well. The skies were heavy with the promise of rain as the cars assembled on the grid. Andrew Kirkcaldy taking up his accustomed position on pole. As Ben Collins joined him in the Embassy car, the officials and crews were swamped with the eager guests of the organisers' SRO. The weather might have been gloomy, but the anticipation of the excitement ahead was tangible. Technical director Jeff Kingston matched his drivers' optimism about their chances.
Yeah, I think with some clever strategy, which may depend on weather, may depend on maybe some safety car, but we have an opportunity maybe to take the race to the Ferraris, so we will see.
With rain dampening the track, the grid was cleared. The safety car led the slick-shod field round for 2 laps, and unusually, these laps would eat into the scheduled 2 hours of racing. Despite the tricky conditions, Jeff reckoned the drivers were on their own.
The only orders I give the drivers is to do their best at any moment, at any time on the circuit, and I personally don't believe in instructions. Our drivers really should be able to work out the situation and act accordingly, but that's just my opinion.
After about 7 minutes, the lights turned to green and the field was unleashed to race. Ben held his position behind the Ferraris on the run to Copse, but Phil Keane had the inside line at the first right-hand bend. The cars had raced for just 2 corners when Hector Lester turned left into Maggots. Suddenly, he was turned through 90 degrees and slid off into the gravel. Stuck fast just off the tarmac, the Ferrari brought the safety car back out again. Ben was forced to hold station in 4th place as the safety car's presence was extended by another car stalling in the pit lane exit. Eventually, after 29 minutes, the cars were released to race. Immediately, Ben set about trying to pass Chris Niarchos in the number 34 Ferrari just ahead. It took longer than he might have wished to put the move to bed. Over the following half hour, the pair swapped places on several occasions. The less experienced Ferrari driver fully exploited the advantages of his faster car, but Ben's racecraft would eventually tell. When the rain slowed their pace after 19 laps, he made a decisive break, securing 3rd. 2 laps later, Chris Niarchos dropped his Ferrari into the gravel at Abbey, and the car was not to feature at the front again. In the pits, co-driver Tim Mullen heard the bad news.
In the gravel?
It's gone into the gravel at Abbey.
3 laps later, the rain had slowed the leaders by over 20 seconds a lap. Andrew Kirkcaldy brought the lead Ferrari in for full wet tyres. It seemed like the obvious response to the persistent heavy showers. At the same time, however, Anthony Reid stopped in the Nissan and his team went for intermediates. They were hedging their bets, expecting the rain to ease off over the rest of the race. Although it was halfway through the allotted 2 hours, the cars had actually only been racing for 30 minutes following the long delays at the start. On the Embassy pit wall, Jeff and Jonathan were happy to leave Ben out for as long as possible. He knew the Porsche was well suited to the tricky conditions.
Looking up, it might spit like it did yesterday, and then it really rained yesterday. But that would all be good, because I think the car is quite good on slicks in the wets. We found out at Knockhill when we won that race. So anything that shakes it up at the front is an advantage for us.
It was a gamble, balancing the changeable weather and the driver's differing abilities. Ben was the stronger driver, but spinning off wouldn't help anyone. Meanwhile, despite his full wet tyres, Nathan Kinch in the Ferrari wasn't able to close consistently on the leaders. Eventually, 9 laps after the Ferrari, Ben decided to stop, calling on the radio for full wet tyres. Despite the conditions, Jeff Kingston ordered the slick tyres to be left on. Wets might help them go faster, but changing 4 wheels would cost precious time. Nissan had needed 3 minutes for their stop. If Neil could keep the car on the track, stopping for no longer than the minimum 45 seconds could be a valuable advantage. With the time up, Jonathan signalled to John Christie to send Neil back out. With 40 minutes to go, Phil Keane still led in the Mosler from Michael Caine in his Porsche, but they had yet to stop. Neil found himself in 4th place, but after the pit stops, that should become 2nd. Ben was unfazed about his tyre recommendation being overruled.
It's one of those things that they know more than me at the moment. On what I knew, I wanted wet. I would have wanted wets, but they can see what's going on.
And then disaster. The officials had timed the Embassy stop as only 42 seconds, 3 short, and they handed down a drive-through penalty. It was a bitter blow, and once back on the track, Neil was still behind the Mosler, and Michael Bentwood in the Nissan was closing fast on his intermediates. Nathan Kinch on full wets was lapping consistently around 20 seconds slower than a dry time, but the rain had now stopped. On his intermediates, Michael Bentwood swept past Neil and set about eating into the Ferrari's lead. While Steve Hyde had also been sent out on slicks and found the conditions not to his liking. He eventually spun the Mosler out of contention. That meant with 7 laps to go, Neil was in 3rd, 21 seconds behind the Nissan, which was still 40 seconds down on the leader. What chance did Jonathan think Neil had?
Let's have a look. We have about 50-second deficit with 16 seconds to go. It needs to drive fairly quickly now. We need to be reeling them in at 10 seconds a lap, which we're not really doing at the moment, so probably no.
Such was the tension. Jonathan had said 16 seconds left when he meant minutes. But what chance was there of the wet tyres losing their grip on the drying track?
Well, I hope they deteriorate fairly quickly. I mean, the Ferrari's now looking for a wet line, certainly down the pit straight. Yeah, let's hope they do go off fairly quickly.
It seemed like the weather was playing into Embassy's hands, just like at Knockhill. Once again, the team had taken a bold decision on what the weather was to do and had got it right. As the end of the race approached, the sun was out, the track was drying. Neil was catching the Nissan at 6 seconds a lap. With just 3 minutes to go, the two were together down the pit straight, and Neil was not to be denied. It seemed that intermediates had not been the way to go to win. There were 2 laps left, and the Ferrari's lead was still 20 seconds. At Embassy, the pit wall atmosphere was electric, and Ferrari's Andrew Cocotti was clearly worried about the progress of the Porsche.
And that puts Neil into P2. Any chance of a win?
I think so, because he's 13 seconds a lap quicker than the leader on that lap. So yeah, really amazing. It'll be very, very close. So on the last lap we might win it, but Neil's doing a mega job.
Could Neil really make up a minute in 6 laps? If they couldn't call it on the pit wall, what might Neil be thinking? Did he know how far ahead of him the Ferrari really was? It didn't matter. An indistinct message over the radio told him to go flat out, and by Abbey on the final lap, he had a Ferrari in his sights. Could he be sure it was Nathan Kinch and not Tim Mullen going well in 34 but a lap down? He made the pass anyway. They knew on the pit wall, though, the team were ready to celebrate an unlikely victory. Despair on the faces of those at Ferrari was matched by elation in the embassy camp.
Yes! Yes, yes, yes!
Jonathan, you must be very pleased.
Absolutely ecstatic. We've beaten the Ferraris fair and squarely today. Our strategy played its part again, and I made it a little bit harder for Neil than I should have done with an itchy finger on the pit stop there, caused him to have a drive-through. Without that, it would have been quite comfortable, but we've shown we can win on, like I say, fairly and squarely.
When I first went out, it was wet down at Stowe and Club, and I was thinking, oh, I'm in all sorts of... I just couldn't keep with anybody. So I could see in the distance the sun was coming back, and I was just hoping it was going to come back quicker than later, and it paid to our price. And it was we had it worse off when we went out in those slicks, and it just like it came our way.
So you'll be apologising about the drive-through?
I will, yes. It makes it easier to apologise now.
Are you going to forgive the boss for the drive-through? Yeah, I'll give it through, yeah. We'll give him that one back. We're equal now. Castle Kevin, it's all finished now, so it's good.
So the embassy pair took the top step of the podium for the second time this season. Helped again by the weather, maybe, but rewarded for the team's tactical daring and the driver's supreme skill in treacherous conditions. Welcome back to Silverstone and Embassy, winning the most exciting race of the year so far. Next, it would be off to Ireland. Dennis McGee driving the truck with mechanics Shane Dolan and Roger van Camelbeck, seeking similar success at Mondello Park. It was 5 weeks since the Silverstone victory, and the team had gone through another reshuffle. Team manager Doug Bebb and his number 2 John Christie, the most experienced pair on which the whole team was based, had both been released. Jonathan had seen deficiencies at Spa that Silverstone's victory couldn't deny.
Most racing is a complex business, and you sometimes have to make decisions which to the outsider or the casual observer seem strange, but nevertheless they are the right decision, and we're entering a critical phase for the team now as we gear up for next year and the years ahead. And one of the key elements you have to have in place is strong leadership. It's not a sport where you can sort of plan by committee. You need to have strong leadership and somebody with a commitment and determination to take the team to the next level.
No one had been taken on to replace Doug and John, Jonathan himself effectively taking day-to-day charge of the team. Data expert Pablo Cangini had been promoted to race engineer, and Jody Firth, Jonathan's right-hand man since the beginning, was now operations manager. The atmosphere around the pit garage was noticeably more relaxed, but could the slimmed-down team deliver on the track? In qualifying for the first race, Chris Niarchos dropped his Ferrari again and ended up in 6th. His teammate Nathan Kinch took the expected pole, but the pack was closer. 4 GT2 cars were within a second, but Neil Cunningham had only managed 3rd.
But with this track, there's so many corners and so many braking zones, power zones, there's no long straights. So who's got the best car on the rubber over an hour? Because it's really hard on tyres.
Not easy for overtaking.
No, very, very narrow. It's like a goat track. Very, very fast goat track.
Late on Saturday afternoon, the cars were led around to the lights and the rolling start. On the clean side of the track, Neil found Nathan Kinch slow away and went wide to try to get by. In the event, this just let the blue Nissan of Michael Bentwood slip up his inside and into third place. Passing proved as hard as expected, and Neil was still in fourth when the safety car was deployed again on lap 7. John Fenimore had spun off in his GT3 Marcos, damaging the car so badly it wouldn't even be able to race on the Sunday. As the clock ticked past 23 minutes, everyone realised they must take the chance to make their pit stop. So Neil brought the Porsche in to hand it over to Ben, and the starting driver was happy with the setup.
We've got a really good car now to run the times we're doing in that sort of slow traffic. We just couldn't get past the Nissan without touching him because it's so narrow track. A few times I tried to go around the outside of him, but it wasn't going to work. He just could lean on us at any time.
The safety car wasn't withdrawn until lap 18, but Ben immediately passed Anthony Reid in the Nissan with the sort of muscular approach that Anthony would recognise from his touring car days. Tim Mullen, meanwhile, was anxious to challenge his teammates as he could only keep the Drivers' Championship alive by beating them. He breezed past both the Porsches a lap later, but couldn't make ground on Andrew Kirkcaldy. Ben Collins was left to find a way past Michael Caine, which he managed a few laps later. But that was as far as he would go. The Ferraris were still 2 seconds faster. So while Kirkcaldy and Kinch headed for the championship, the Arcos and Mullen in second pulled a few points further away from the Embassy pair. At the finish, Andrew had allowed Tim to close, but the result was never in doubt. After winning 8 out of 10 races, Kirkcaldy and Kinch were worthy champions, particularly after missing out so narrowly last year. But Ben Collins was already thinking about Sunday's race.
It would be nice to think we can dream up something tomorrow to stick to the Ferraris, but, you know, in a dry track, we've just not got that sort of pace, so it'd be great to get on the podium again. And if we do more than that, it's because we've done something clever, but, you know, I think third will be on.
There were no problems for Ben in the Sunday warm-up, but setting fastest time was devalued a little as the newly crowned champions sat out the session. After his first race as operations manager, Jody Firth seemed well at ease with his enhanced role on the pit wall.
Very happy. It seems quite natural. I was able to undertake that role quite easily. We had Pablo primarily engineering the car. He did an excellent job. The drivers thought the car was great. Obviously ended up, as you say, with the podium of the third place. And I think that's a very good result for the team. The Ferraris are always difficult to beat, and we have to aim at being best of the rest, and we're more than capable of it, and occasionally, as you've seen, we're able to upset those Ferraris, but I think the day went excellently, yes.
Sunday morning promised a dry track and warmer weather as the enthusiastic Irish supporters arrived at the circuit. The champions were on pole again, determined to maintain their run of dry track successes. Alongside were their teammates, with Anthony Reid third in the Nissan, flanked by the Michael Caine Porsche, and Ben Collins back in fifth. He needed to be first Porsche home and to try to chip away at the second Ferrari's lead in the points table. The lessons of race one were definitely learned by the Embassy team. Ben decided to use the inside line this time, instead of getting hung out to dry and losing places around the outside. Anthony Reid briefly challenged the Ferraris. That was probably as close as the rest of the field would get. As the red cars streaked away, it became clear that Reid's Nissan was holding up the faster Porsches. Until lap 5, when Michael Caine seized a half-offered opportunity, turned the Nissan round and off the road. Ben slipped by into third as the other Porsche scrambled back on. So one objective was achieved. Now it was time to set off after the Ferraris. On lap 13, leader Andrew Kirkcaldy ran wide, scrambling over the gravel and through the grass. Tim Mullen slipped ahead in the second Ferrari, and Andrew was forced to pit to clear his air intakes of grass just as Neil Cunningham had at Castle Combe. It was an uncharacteristic error.
I don't really know what happened. I think I either dropped the wheel off the road or there was some moisture or something down because I just locked a right wheel. I couldn't stop and I went off.
Come on, it was pressure from Tim.
No, he wasn't that close. I mean, I was just trying to do consistent lap times, but maybe too much celebrating last night, I don't know.
The new champion's mistake left Ben in a short-lived second place to Tim Mullen's Ferrari and just ahead of Michael Caine in the rival Porsche when Jonathan called him in to hand over to Neil. A lap later, Mike Jordan took over from Michael Caine in the Eurotech Porsche, and the 77 car emerged ahead of Neil by a couple of lengths, which would have left the Embassy drivers in fourth place, had not Chris Niarchos dropped the Ferrari once more on his outlap from the pits. So, no longer top Porsche, but at least ahead of championship rivals Niarchos and Mullin. Neil set about trying to find a way past the 77 car on Mondello's narrow goat track. But it was not an easy task, as he'd anticipated before the weekend started. And despite vigorous encouragement from the pit wall, Embassy had to settle for another third-place finish. Despite Cocotti's off-track excursions, the 35 Ferrari still comfortably racked up win number 9 as Chris Niarchos recovered to 5th, meaning Ben and Neil were still 7 points off second place in the drivers' table. Finishing behind the Jordan and Caine Porsche also meant they ceded second place in the Teams Championship to the Eurotech crew that runs it. And that left Jonathan puzzling over how they let their arch Porsche rivals slip in front.
No, the objective this weekend was always to finish ahead of the 77 car in both races, and managed it yesterday, but not today.
Could you tell why Neil led Michael by?
I've got to take the blame myself really on that one. We probably brought Ben in a lap too early on the stops, which gave Mickey Caine a lap in sort of clear track. Just gave him those extra couple of tenths that put Neil behind Mike Jordan.
Yeah, I think we must have lost in the pit stop, which, I thought we had the lead on him. But I think Michael must have done a quick last lap just to gain that little bit on us. By the time we got to the braking area, I was on his bumpers. It was only a couple of seconds. So, Silverstone.
In terms of the season, though, things are looking okay.
Yeah, things are good. We're now back to third in the Teams Championship, point behind Eurotech, so it's all to play for with Silverstone coming up.
And the reorganisation worked okay this weekend?
Well, we haven't suffered because of it, so I think it's got to be taken as a positive step, yes.
So to the last event at Silverstone, with many issues still to be decided for Jonathan France's Embassy team. You can see how they get on later this month in a special 2-hour-long programme looking back over the whole season.